So, let's talk about Moomins. Moomins are, of course, the creation of the Finnish children's author Tove Jansson, and because everything related to Finland is a meme these days, a lot of international folks are getting exposed to Moomins for the very first time. So, I thought it would be fun to make a little introductory video into Moomins and Moomin lore. In case you are encountering these characters for the first time, you'll have some idea who these weird white hippo-looking dudes are. So basically, the Moomintrolls have appeared in about 20-ish kids' books written by Jansson, who despite being known as an author, is actually far more well known as an illustrator, and also drew over 1,000 Moomin comic strips, in addition to writing the books. In fact, she also had a habit of just rewriting those same books. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Second Moomin book was rewritten from scratch 3 times over. And a lot of people of my generation have particular affinity for the early 90s Moomin television series, which was animated in Japan. So what I'm basically getting at is that there's actually quite a lot of Moomin media, because the Moomin books have been going on since the 1940s. The characters in Moomin have also evolved and changed over time. So basically, once I move on to talking about the Moomin characters, I want to stress, however, that these characters have actually changed and evolved over time, and Tove Jansson even recognized this, which is why she kept re-envisioning some of her earlier work. And also because I didn't want this video to run too long, because there are a lot, and I do mean a lot, of Moomin characters. I wanted to give all the basic information here, but not overburden the video, so I'm only going to be discussing mostly characters from the original Moomin books, with one exception. So, what exactly are the Moomin stories about? Well, the Moomins are a family of trolls living in Moomin Valley and in the round blue Moomin house. Their life is mostly very placid and unexciting, but then something inevitably shakes up things in Moomin Valley, whether it's things washing up on the shores of the valley, just some random weirdos creeping around, or in some cases just good old-fashioned natural disasters. Initially, the Moomins will be shocked and also experience a certain level of excitement over what's going on. Inevitably, the Moomins always kind of long for return to their placid, normal existence. That's kind of the core message of these books. It's just to be content with who you are and what you have in life. And a running theme in the Moomin characters really is that a lot of them have these weird and sometimes pretty frivolous obsessions, which will become evident once I start talking about them. Now, one last caveat before we start talking about the characters, though, is that Tove Jansson, in case you haven't already figured out, was a Finland Swede. That is to say, a Finnish citizen, but who spoke Swedish as her first language. And all the Moomin books were also originally written in Swedish. However, me being a Finnish speaker, I have always been referring to these characters by their Finnish names, and I will be doing that in this video as well. But fret not, I will be showcasing the characters' original Swedish names as well, because, well, the English names for these characters are usually just the Swedish names. And if there is a big difference with the Swedish name, I'll point it out in the video as we go along. But first, let's start with the Moomin family itself. The main character of the Moomin books is Muumipeikko, or Moomintroll. Moomintroll is a child. The books never really specify what kind of a child, but the point is that he's a bit immature. He always longs for adventure and excitement and idolizes very manly things, like Edward Rice Burroughs' Tarzan, which, yes, apparently exists in the Moomin universe. But at the end of the day, Moomintroll is also kind of sensitive, and when things get really, really bad, he always just wants to go to his mother, Moomin Mama, which I don't blame him for, because Moomin Mama is like the goat of all fictional moms. What I find really funny is that Tove Jansson's original idea for the Moomin books was to make a main character who was kind of unappealing and ugly, which is weird because I think most of us Finns will basically just view Moomins as pretty cuddly and cute. Muumipapa, or Moomin Papa, is of course the Moomintroll's dad, who in the various media always longs for his exciting youth when he had all kinds of weird adventures, and yes, Moomin Papa is the main character of one of these books which details his younger years. Moomin Papa has a pretty tragic backstory. He was abandoned by his mother, and then went on to have a bunch of adventures with a group of friends who all suspiciously look very similar to Moomintroll's friends, and a few of them are actually canonically related. However, at the end of the day, Moomin Papa tends to always realize that he's just, too old to go on exciting adventures, And he also just realizes that, you know, he has things pretty good in the Moomin house. Moomin Mama, of course, is Moomintroll's mom. And like I said, in later depictions, she's shown to be basically the safe haven for pretty much all of the characters in the Moomin Valley. She's just super tolerant and accepting of even characters who seem very dangerous at face value. In the very early Moomin stories, Moomin Papa and Moomin Mama would be kind of fussy about rather silly and trivial things like alcohol, or in Moomin Mama's case, housework. But these are characteristics that were slowly kind of weaved out of the characters over time. Another thing about these characters' names that showcases Tove Jansson's Swedish origins, that she used the terms Pappa and Mamma, which are the informal names for your mom and dad in Swedish. This is not what you would call your parents in Finnish. You will notice that even in the Finnish translations, the translators just elected to keep Pappa and Mamma in the characters' names, probably just because it made things a lot easier. And yes, I know that in some Finnish families, it is considered kind of normal to just refer to your mom as Mamma in a sort of a jokey way. Pappa is the one that always confused me, because in my family, that referred to our grandfather. There is kind of a fourth unofficial member of the Moomin family, though, which is the ancestor. This is a hairy little Moomin that originally was born just as a background illustration. Jansson's books typically have a lot of weirdos just hanging around in the background. Also a very kind of a traditional Finnish thing. Pagan Finns, for instance, believe that mice and rats that you saw around your house were probably your reborn ancestors. And in the Moomin anime series, they took this concept quite literally. In the time travel episode, the Moomins face a group of these hairy Moomins. However, the ancestor in the Moomin books is a bit of an ambiguous character. I don't think it's even obvious if the other Moomins are aware that he exists. Alright, and now we get to Moomin's friends. First we have Snufkin, or Nuuskamuikkunen. His Swedish name is Snusmuriken. Now, the name obviously derives from snuff, which is that disgusting tobacco product that comes in bags that you stick under your lip. I don't think in any of the books Snufkin is intended to be using snuff, but he certainly will smoke a pipe occasionally, as will Moomin Papa. You gotta remember that these books were coming out in the 40s and 50s when smoking was a little bit more socially acceptable. Snufkin is basically a professional hobo. He has no fixed address or profession, and he prefers to live on the outskirts of society, and in a few of the stories he even just blatantly breaks the rules of society. He's basically Moomintroll's best friend, and they have this weird dynamic, because in the Moomin lore, Moomins hibernate, which is they literally sleep through winter, which is fortunate because that's when Snufkin leaves Moomin Valley and goes south, yes, like a bird, because his favorite pastime is fishing, and apparently there's much better fishing in other parts. I guess Snufkin is not a big fan of ice fishing then. Snufkin is one of these characters who went through a bit of a change over time. In the original Moomin books, Snufkin was actually quite verbose and talkative, but over time he kind of became this more silent drifter type. And those of you who are only familiar with the English dub of that Moomin anime that I talked about, I highly recommend checking out what he sounded like in the Finnish version. I think you'll be a little bit shocked. Next is Snorkmaiden, or Niskuneiti. Her Swedish name is just Snorkfröken, and fröken just means maiden. Snorkmaiden is Moomintroll's girlfriend, and originally in the books, Snorks are actually a different species from the Moomin, despite the fact that they look very similar. I guess this is the same thing as with the Hemulin. Snorkmaiden is also the younger sister of Snork, who is a science-obsessed weirdo, and in the anime series there is an ongoing storyline of him trying to build a flying machine. Snorkmaiden's outstanding characteristic is that she's a bit over-preoccupied with romance and things that are womanly, which I will admit makes her a little bit grating in some of these stories. But at the end of the day, she's also well-meaning and kinda helps along with the crew on their various adventures. Next up we have Little Mai, or Pikku Moo, who's basically the sort of breakout character of the Moomins and easily the most popular of the non-Moomin characters. Little Mai is the little sister of Mimble's daughter, who in the anime had her name just shortened to Mimble, while Little Mai and Mimble's mother was originally called the Mimble. On that name, Mimble was apparently a bit of a Jansson family in-joke, which referred to a woman of very loose morals, which is why Mimble has like a billion children. Anyway, Little Mai is basically this weird little gremlin child who fits in a picnic basket and will choose violence in all situations, picking fights with characters much bigger than herself. no matter what the situation. Little Mai is also one of the lead characters of one of my favorite Moomin books, Kuinka sitten kävikään. I'll put the English translation here because I can't quite think of it right now. But yeah, definitely one of the outstanding characters of the whole Moomin series overall. Next up we have Nipsu, or Sniff. Sniff is a weird dog, or possibly rat boy. It's kind of ambiguous what he's supposed to be, because in the very early Moomin stories he had a fluffy tail just like the Moomins, but in later depictions he just has this straight sort of radish tail. Sniff always goes along on the Moomins on various adventures. Though he is shown to be a little bit cowardly and selfish as well as greedy, Sniff often always gets excited when there's gold or money involved on their various adventures. But he ultimately always comes through for his friends as well. Now the last character in Moomin's friend circle is a kind of an borderline case, I would say. I had to bring this character up just because of its real life significance, and that is Tuutikki, whose name in Finnish is also Tuutikki. So it's just basically the same. Tuutikki first appears in the Magical Winter book, in which Moomintroll wakes up prematurely from his hibernation and gets to experience winter for the first time. Tuutikki is a female character who enjoys very outdoorsy things, like fishing for instance. And the character is basically just a non-too-subtle insertion of Tuulikki Pietilä, who was Tove Jansson's partner for the better part of her life. The last group of characters I wanted to talk about are sort of antagonistic characters. I do need to stress that there are no flat-out evil characters anywhere in the Moomin series. While there are certainly characters who might be dangerous to the Moomins, the danger is usually kind of the result of some kind of a misunderstanding, and you'll get what I mean once we go through these characters. Now, first are the Hattifatties, Hattivatit. Now, I'm not entirely sure of the canonical origins of the Hattifatties, but at least in one of the Moomin comics that I read, the Hattifatties were originally seagulls who got on the nerves of the king of Moomin Valley, who then had his court magician turn the Hattifatties into these weird ghost-like or possibly tentacle-shaped creatures. Now, the Hattifatties have no mouths, so they no longer made any noise, but they did unfortunately acquire another far more unfortunate special ability, which is the ability to conduct electricity. Hattifatties are also drawn to thunderstorms, and they migrate in large packs, meaning that several Moomin characters have had an unfortunate habit of crossing their path, getting dragged away by the Hattifatties, and oftentimes getting electrocuted in the process. But it's important to know that the Hattifatties are not malicious. They're more like hive-minded animals who don't know that they're doing any harm to anybody. And this is basically the point that I'm getting, is that the Hattifatties never intentionally try to harm anybody. It's just that through happenstance, the Moomin characters often get into trouble whenever they encounter the Hattifatties. Next we have the Grok, Mörkö, or in the Swedish name, Morran. On the name, real quickly, the Swedish name Morran and the English name Grok are very obviously supposed to be based on the noise that the Grok makes. And don't get me wrong, Mörkö is too, but Mörkö is also just a general term for a boogeyman in Finnish, which is kind of funny because an often forgotten detail about the Grok is the fact that the Grok is actually supposed to be female. This is something that I don't think in Finnish we really think about because, you know, Finnish doesn't have gendered pronouns. The Grok is a feared character in Moomin Valley, but in actuality, the Grok is also kind of a tragic character because she's literally just so lonely and cold that she literally causes things to freeze which she touches. The Moomins first encounter the Grok when a pair of characters come to the Moomin house with a piece of jewelry that they have stolen from the Grok, but they're eventually able to appease the Grok by giving her a piece of jewelry from Moomin Mama's purse. So this is the other thing, is that the Grok is also not inherently malicious or anything. It's just that because of her ability to freeze things with her touch, why all the other Moomin characters see her as dangerous and try to avoid her. But I'm not gonna lie to you, as a kid I found the Grok just incredibly creepy. This last character is somebody who did not originate from the Moomin books, but they're such a prominent character that I felt obliged to really mention them, because they might be the only inherently evil, or at least a morally corrupt character in all of Moomin Valley, and that of course is Stinky, or Haisuli. Haisuli actually debuted in the Moomin comic strips. One of his outstanding qualities was of course his awful body odor, which I find incredibly funny because in almost all later adaptations, this characteristic of his has been completely whitewashed. Which seems strange because, you know, his name still refers to him being Stinky. So, Stinky is basically just a harbinger of chaos, doing mean things just for the sake of being mean, which includes lying to people, playing pranks on them, and then very frequently just good old-fashioned petty theft. Yes, Stinky is just the absolute worst. And that concludes this video. Like I said, this was really supposed to be just an elementary introduction to the Moomin characters. There were a lot of characters that I had to leave out that I really would have wanted to have talked about, like Nini, the witch, Alisa, the police chief, and Hemulin, not to mention the hobgoblin or the Philly junk. Now, I don't really have plans on making a follow-up to this video. I have been thinking about talking about the Moomin video games that I used to play as a kid. But here's the thing, I like Moomins myself, so I felt like maybe this little introductory video could serve as a nice introduction to people. Most Moomin media tends to be fairly high quality because Tove Jansson was really controlling of most of it. So if you decide to check out one of the many Moomin movies, or that Moomin anime series, or indeed any of the Moomin books or comic strips, I highly recommend it. It's just that I want people to be maybe aware that the characterizations might be a little bit different depending on the medium, but also that the change was also made intentionally by Jansson herself. Anyway, that was this video. Until next time, I'm TheHande. See you on the next one.